let's get into the big topic of open source, something that we actually say at Red Hat.
We have a
This is so
we
awesome.
are an open culture that believes
actually
in
a big
importance of
piece
What is that process that a developer, or let's say a
As the
developer
Kubernetes ecosystem really boomed,
Hello and welcome to this week's Ask an OpenShift Admin Office Hours live stream. I am co-host Andrew Sullivan, joined by the other co-host, Mr. Johnny Rickard. How are you, sir?
Hi, how's it going? I'm the other guy.
Yeah, the other Johnny, if you will.
That's
You got
right.
a fancy screen in behind you this week.
Yeah, the in-laws are here, so I had to shuffle my office, and I've got my little, room protector, so that way you guys can see all my awesome stuff and mess.
Oh, your mess. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. You notice I have a wall behind me, and
That's right.
there's like a line.
Yeah, my house is lived in, so like.
Yeah. Oh, wait. Years ago, I say that so years ago, and I feel like episode 100 is a good time to reminisce, right? But so when we first started doing this, I had a different office. It was on a different floor in a big open. It's a bonus room here in the U.S., right? I literally had tape on the floors, like where the camera was, so that way I knew, because it was also like my kids' playroom and like where a bunch of other stuff, our guest room. It was like all of these things combined into one. And so I had tape on the floor of like, oh, I need to move the dog toys out of here, and I need to get this kid toy out of here, and all this other stuff. So, but yeah, 100 episodes. Yeah, congratulations, Johnny. You've been here for more than half. We figured out the other day. So
Yeah, that's awesome. It's been an awesome ride, man. Like, when we closed out last year, like I was excited. I'm excited to see where we're going this year. Like it's moving fast.
yeah. Yeah, I dug back in the archives, right? So I was trying to see if we could find the first OpenShift TV, live stream that went out, and apparently somebody deleted it. So it was put out on May 4th, 2020, and it was like this introduction overview type thing of, hey, so we're going to be doing live streaming, and it's sadly been taken down. The most recent one, or the earliest one I could find, was something related to it's what's new for developers in 4.4.
Oof.
But I did find the very first live stream that I did, which it turns out is still one of the more popular ones, frighteningly enough. Here, I'll post the link there in chat. It's the installing OpenShift 4.4 to vSphere. And I think I did a preview of vSphere IPI because it was before 4.5. 4.5 was when vSphere IPI came.
Yep.
So, yeah, that was a long time ago. It was almost 3 years ago. Crazy to think where we've come and all the fun that we've had.
I know. Time flies, man.
Yeah, and it's been an interesting journey, right? I mean, you've been here with me through most of this stuff of going through and working with the marketing folks and getting all the branding done and having all the stuff around it. We have swag that's been created. Which, speaking of which, yeah, exactly. And Johnny and I both have stacks of stickers. So if anybody would like us to mail you a sticker, please reach out. Johnny, I think I'm springing that on you, but
that's cool.
Yeah, so reach out. You can always reach out to Johnny or I. Here, I'll put up our little caption here. So reach out to me via email is probably the best way. Andrew.sullivan@redhat.com or @practicalandrew on the social media. Or Johnny is Johnny, JONNY, no H, @redhat.com or JRockTX. So yeah, we've got stickers. Episode 100. Let's mail out some stickers, Johnny.
Yeah, I'm down.
So, yeah, send us a message if you don't mind. Send us your mailing address, and we'll do our best to get all of those out there as much as we can. I would say don't post it in chat because everybody will be able to see it. So I don't know if you want packages from random folks across the internet. Let's see, Bjorn, will you see you in Amsterdam? I won't be in Amsterdam. I don't think you'll be there, Johnny.
I won't be there either.
Yep. So there will be a few folks. There's how many people are going from Red Hat total? I think there's like 60 or so going from Red Hat, including roughly a dozen or 15 folks from the BU, from the product team. So you'll see a bunch of us Red Hatters there, around the booth, a bunch of different sessions of OpenShift Commons, which is something we're going to bring up today in the top of mind. If you're there for day 0, I think they still call those events. OpenShift Commons will be a great one. They have here, I'll just go ahead and share my window here. Let's see this guy. So yeah, here's the OpenShift Commons schedule. So lots of good stuff going on there. Christian will be there? I didn't know Christian was going to be there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was going. I could be lying. So, I mean, take that for what it is.
I mean, I haven't asked
think
him,
he's
so
going.
it's entirely possible. Yeah. There, I'll share that link. So Commons is a great event. It is also, if you're not going to be there in person, they stream the whole thing. So just go to, I think it's commons.openshift.com, and from there, I suppose I could look, right? Commons.openshift.com. Shift Commons. Oh, OpenShift.org. That's why. And not OpenShift.com. So OpenShift Commons, if you go here during the OpenShift Commons, you can see KubeCon Europe. So from here, there'll be a link that has the live stream and all that other stuff that's going on there. So it's those are great. And I know the product team is going to be there. They're going to be doing a update, first or the last thing in the day, something like that here. OpenShift release and roadmap update. So be sure to check all of that out. If whether or not you're going to KubeCon, whether or not you're going to Summit, they're always great sessions there. Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself because we've now bantered back and forth, and we have not introduced today's guest or topic. So today, episode 100 is special in more ways than just one because Rosemary, I don't know if we told you this. I believe you are the first partner guest that we have had join us here on the live stream.
Oh, something like the surprising. First, I didn't know it was the 100 episodes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Very big milestone. I'm honored. And yes, thank you for having me here. I didn't realize that I would be the first partner guest.
So yeah, it's a big day, and
Yeah.
I would say first, not the last. We do have plans to bring others on, but I feel like this is a big step forward for us and bringing others on. It's not just me and Johnny and other Red Hatters with talking heads. Getting the ecosystem involved, and I think bringing HashiCorp, talking about Vault. I think this is a big one and something that's really important. I can't tell you how many questions I've
No
answered over the
pressure,
years.
right? No pressure at all.
Yeah.
100 episodes. First partner.
Better show up.
No pressure.
Better show up.
Security.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, your sticker's in the mail. That's all I got. Yeah. So, our Hope 9. That's a good point. My apologies to Dean if he's listening. Dean, I consider you family. He's VMware, but I've known and worked with Dean for a while, so I forget that he isn't a Red Hatter because we talk on a regular basis. He's even on the Red Hat Slack. So, anyways, yeah. So second partner there, Rosemary. So less pressure. How's that?
I'm good with that. That makes me feel better. I still want a sticker, but it makes me feel better.
Oh, it's still in the mail. You're good.
Yeah. So yes, thank you so much for joining us today. I'll let you introduce yourself. But yeah, we're super excited to talk about HashiCorp and Vault today.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm Rosemary. I'm a developer advocate at HashiCorp. Done a lot of interesting things with the HashiCorp tools. Formerly was working on Terraform. Now I primarily cover console, Vault, and Boundary. So if you have any questions across the board, I'll try to answer them. Today is going to be focused on Vault and Kubernetes. But if you have adjacent questions on any of the other tools, I'm happy to help answer them.
Yeah, and I can't tell you how many times I've answered the question or talked about what do you mean secrets aren't secure? I realize that we're now at we just talked about Kubernetes 1.27 was released today. OpenShift 4.13 is coming out soon, so that makes it the 23rd, 24th release, 23rd because we skipped 3.8, so that would be. So no, 22nd because we also skipped 4.0.
4.0, yep.
So we're a long way down this path, and it's still a regular question that comes up of secrets aren't secure. Well, no, they're just base 64 encoded, so they're obfuscated. And how do we protect that data? How do we prevent just anybody from getting access to the often sensitive data that's stored in those secrets? So I think this is a really awesome topic, and it's something that I'm excited to talk about. Yes, when 4.13 is coming soon. I will use that as a springboard to talk about what's happening with the stream over the next couple of weeks. So next week is KubeCon. So historically, we don't stream during KubeCon or during Red Hat Summit. That is us encouraging you all to go and pay attention to all the stuff that's happening there. Again, tons of content that's happening. Definitely recommend that you, if nothing else, take time to go back and review, OpenShift Commons sessions during during our normal streaming time. And then, so that is next week. The week after that, the 26th, is the What's New in OpenShift 4.13 live stream. So that will be at 10 a.m. Eastern. I think it's 10 a.m. through 11:30 a.m. Eastern. So overlapping with our stream, of course. And we will, of course, give preference to them. So lots and lots of new stuff happening in 4.13. And then we'll be back May 3rd, if I remember correctly, Johnny.
Yep.
May 3rd. So we'll start talking about what's new in OpenShift 4.13 for admins at that point. And then May 10th, we have, I want to say Veeam, the Caston folks coming on and joining us.
Yep.
So. And then that's as far as I've thought ahead, because I think after that is Summit. And right now I'm so like my day job is basically Summit and labs. So I will be at Summit. I think you'll be at Summit too, right, Johnny?
No, I'll be a spectator.
Oh, well, I will have you. I will keep you in mind. I will have you in my in my heart, in my mind, as I go through and Proctor Labs and all that other stuff. So anybody who will be at Summit, please feel free to stop by and see us. I'm going to. I might have some swag depending on how much we have left and all that other stuff. So if you can find me early enough in the week, because I'm sure it'll go quickly, be sure to stop by and ask what we got left. And with that, was there anything? What else do we have top of mind, Johnny? There was a couple of other things.
AWS and OCP IPI installs.
Yes. Thank you.
Go ahead.
No. If you want to talk about that, you can while I click through things.
Yeah. So yesterday, I guess AWS S3 policies had changed, and they were more restrictive, and so it was essentially blocking all of our IPI installs into AWS regions. So it looks like right now it's just limited to US East 2 and AWS China. I'm testing a deployment in AWS. Nope. So I tried in US East 1, and I'm having the policy issue on East 1. So it looks like it's still an issue in AWS just across the board.
Yeah.
For IPI installs.
Yeah. So as well as Rosa and OpenShift dedicated. And anything else that's happening inside of AWS. So I just posted the link to status.redhat.com. There's a big banner up there. And then I clicked the link in that banner that takes us over to this overview that goes into, or I say overview, this is the details page that goes into everything that's happening and how to figure out if it's happening and all that other stuff. So I do know that this is, as you would expect, very much at the top of the priority queue for engineering, and they're working on ways to mitigate isn't the right word, but adapt to this change, so that way it's no longer an issue. So keep an eye out for that. Keep an eye on this KCS as well as the status.redhat.com page to get updates.
So Lester just posted that it looks like West 1 and West 2, US West 1 and West 2 are working.
Yep.
But yeah, if you're trying to deploy in US East, like especially one is definitely down. I just ran into the error.
Yeah. I don't know if that's for everyone. I don't know how all that works, because what I saw was that they had asked AWS to stop the rollout, but I don't know if that is just for our accounts. So I don't know how all of that works, but
gotcha.
Yeah, it would be interesting if we stopped a rollout for something like worldwide to everyone, just because of
we're partners.
Yeah. The last thing that I had here before we move on is a blog post. This was an exciting one. I stumbled across this the other day from oncloud.redhat.com/blog. So how to build a home Kubernetes lab with Microshift and GitOps. So this one I thought was really cool, and a bit of a nod over to the GitOps guide to the Galaxy folks. So this is using Microshift. So it is not OpenShift. It is a Kubernetes that is deployed on top of Red Hat Enterprise Linux for Edge, or RHEL for Edge. But I thought that this was a really interesting and attainable way of getting familiar and getting started with GitOps and Argo CD. So if you follow through this blog post, Johnny, I don't know if you posted this or not.
I did not.
Okay, I got it. So if you walk through that blog post, it talks about, once you have your cluster installed, standing up a Git server and then pointing Argo CD at that, and then being able to deploy applications utilizing that. So I thought it was really cool. And again, an attainable way for most folks, because it's, I think this person used a NUC, but you can use any similar, home hardware type of thing. But yeah, get familiar with GitOps, right? We've talked about GitOps, I don't know how many times, Johnny. GitOps is your day-to-day job. So
Yep.
or as being one of the ways that we can do or simplify or make many things easier, particularly around things like DR and all that, where recovering applications is just the repointing Argo or pointing a new Argo at the old GitHub repository or Git repository. AWS Postmortem will be interesting to read. Yes, our Hope 9. Not as interesting as the Reddit one because I doubt there's any Kubernetes involved, but definitely interesting to see what happened over there and whatever's going on. All right, I think that covered all the stuff that I had in here. Let's see, episode 100, the streaming calendar, our lab thing, OpenShift Commons, 1.27, if you want to talk about that real quick, Johnny.
Yeah, it had like, I can't remember the number of releases at the, oh, there it is, 60 enhancements. So a lot of cool things coming out. There were some things that were related to storage. The image registry was the big one. And I can't remember, I'd have to go back and look, but there were some things I think that might affect OpenShift down the road, but not right now. So I would just have to go back and look before I could actually give like a decent answer on this.
Yeah.
Or response.
1.27 is, so let's see, what are we on now? I don't even remember. Here,
25 and 12.
Yeah. So that would make 26 and 13. So 27 is realistically 1.14 or 4.14. So we've got a little bit of time before we got to think about that. But as always, keep an eye on what's happening in upstream Kubernetes because it eventually affects OpenShift. All right. So yeah, that's all I had for the top of mind stuff, and I am anxious. I'm wanting to get to today's topic. So it's funny. I will admit to you, Rosemary, that I have talked about and interacted and like been surrounded by HashiCorp Vault in various ways for literally 5+ years, but my actual experience with it is almost none. Because it's just one of those. I do tech marketing, right?
Yeah.
Most of my clusters, the vast majority of my clusters, last for somewhere between 8 and 16 hours because I'm constantly setting up and tearing down. I have a few long-lived clusters that I do various things with, but most of them are very short-lived. And the long-lasting ones, they're for me, right? They're not running anything that anybody else accesses. I don't need that untrustworthy and slightly suspicious Johnny having access to my stuff. So even though I say that knowing that he sent me credentials for a cluster earlier, just like, hey, you got a cluster? Yep, here's Kubeadmin.
Sharing is caring.
So yeah, I will hand over to you and please tell us about HashiCorp Vault.
Well, it's pretty informal. I only have one diagram. And so just as a warning, if anybody has questions or you're sort of lost in the explanation, just let me know and I can pull up something and we can talk through it in more detail. But Vault, for those who are not as familiar, is a secrets manager. Its primary purpose is to store, but also manage the life cycle of secrets. Secrets being sensitive information that grants you access to other systems. So we're not necessarily talking about human to machine access necessarily. Vault is really focused on providing secrets that relate to machine access, sometimes to human to machine access. And there's sort of caveats to that, right? So you're not going to, as an end consumer, is not necessarily going to log into Vault to get your password to your email account, for example. That's not typically, it's not 1Password, it's not LastPass, it's not any of the password managers necessarily. It's a lot broader in scope. So sort of the better use case or the more common use cases that I see people use Vault for tend to be the distribution, revocation of certificates across different systems. Sometimes it's API tokens. Other times it's database usernames and passwords. That's the example I'll show if we get to that demo. But anything that requires service to machine access is technically a secret. So you store that in Vault. Vault, let me see. So there's a couple of flavors of Vault. There's open source Vault. So that means you deploy it, you run it. Vault architecturally comes with servers and you have to maintain those servers. Ideally, you have multiple servers, right, for availability, and you can use agents to retrieve the secret from Vault servers and inject it into applications, right? That's usually the workflow there. There's also a cloud version, HashiCorp Cloud Platform version now, so you don't have to run the servers. You provision and you get the servers that you want, and then you can use that to store your secrets and you access the Vault servers that way. There's also Vault Enterprise. Vault Enterprise is for, let's say, larger scale situations where, let's say, you have multiple Kubernetes clusters and they're all located in different regions of the world, even, and you want some consistency across your secrets. Vault Enterprise is better for the performance replication and disaster recovery. So that's the quick overview of Vault in general.
So I want to go back to basics just a little bit. So when we think about a secret versus a config map versus, any of the other type of Kubernetes objects that can be mapped into a pod, they provide data into whatever's running inside of there. So, config map or secret, they can both basically hold the same information at the end of the day. But, provide something like a configuration file, or a secret would be like the password for accessing the database or the API token or something like that. So a solution like Vault is important because of a couple of different reasons. One, just storing a secret object in Kubernetes is not secure. So what does that mean? So one, it's entirely based on RBAC of the user, right? So if I'm a cluster admin, if I'm someone who has access to that namespace, I can just do like a kubectl or an OC get secret and look at that secret and see the data that's in there. Again, it's just obfuscated, right? It's stored base64 encoded. So one, we want to control access to that. And two, let's assume that I do trust all of the users to my cluster. That data is not necessarily protected. I mean, yes, we can encrypt etcd or something like that. But is that good enough? Is that enough for your team, for your organization, et cetera? And then I think three is something that you brought up there at the end, which is really once we start looking beyond the scope of a single cluster. Hey, I've got, my application is deployed, across 7 regions globally, and it's, doing all of these other things, and I need to get, this certificate or this piece of data distributed across all of those. And being able to do that, securely, reliably, I think is something that's really important. So I'll pause there to see if, if any additional thoughts or comments on that. Make sure I got everything right as well.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I think the common question that people ask me about Kubernetes specifically is a Kubernetes secret equivalent to a Vault secret? And they're two separate entities. There are methods that we have in integrations that Vault has with Kubernetes that allow you to use Kubernetes secrets. A lot of applications, services, things that you deploy third-party onto Kubernetes still relies on the API object of a secret, right? And it's hard to refactor those deployments to use Vault sometimes. So you can use Vault to funnel the secret to a Kubernetes secret, but they are not the same thing. So a secret in Vault does not necessarily equate to a Kubernetes secret.
And it is a different API, right?
Yes, completely different API.
Yeah. And what I mean by that, here, I'll share my screen real quick. I should have prepped better. I should have installed your operator. So what I mean by that is if we come into the CRDs and look for secret, of course you're going to be difficult about it. Anyways, the regular secret is just a base. It's not showing up here because it's not a CRD. It's like one of the core Kubernetes objects. Yeah, API objects. So it's like a Kubernetes API, whereas the Vault secret is a completely separate API that shows up as a CRD inside of here. So you have to reference it differently by default is what I think you're saying, right, Rosemary?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as a note that there is a Vault operator. So if you do want to deploy Vault onto Kubernetes, the Vault servers, do that at your own risk. Make sure that you are securing them properly. Vault has its own internal mechanisms. We could go really far down the rabbit hole on this one, but it has its own internal mechanisms to encrypt any data that it is storing regarding the secrets. So use caution whenever you do deploy Vault onto Kubernetes. Make sure you are securing those servers. They're typically done in stateful sets because they do persist that data using what is called the integrated storage mechanism in there. So they are usually typically deployed as stateful sets, but when you do deploy Vault onto Kubernetes, there is the operator, I believe, through OpenShift. And then there's also the Helm chart. The Helm chart is officially supported by HashiCorp, so you can do one or the other. The Helm chart has OpenShift specific values, so you can pick and choose what kind of configuration you want.
Yeah,
So,
Johnny,
Rosemary,
I was gonna throw you under the bus for the OpenShift specific stuff because I know you do a lot of stuff with the validated patterns around that.
yeah, we use the Helm chart exclusively for the validated patterns. So yeah, it's been awesome. We used to pull it down directly, but now we've just kind of I think we clone it and use it as part of the pattern instead of actually having Helm go out and pull it down each time. A question I have for you about the operator though, when you run the operator and you've got it all set up, does it keep it unsealed so that way you can interact with it, or is that like a interaction by interaction where it's like, hey, I need the secret, go and seal the vault, via API call and some permission or RBAC?
Yeah. I'm not sure. It's been a while since I've used the Vault operator. I believe that it's not auto unsealed. So you do have to do the unseal process because it needs a place to store the keys.
Okay.
The sort of for those who are not familiar with Vault initial setup, Vault, when I mentioned it encrypts the data in its integrated storage mechanism, that encryption is managed through a set of seal keys, right? So you get a set of keys, which people have told me to avoid this analogy, but it's the best analogy I got. It's sort of like these seal keys are like the nuclear codes. You need a certain number of them in order to unseal the vault. The vault seals whenever it, let's say, shuts down or one of the servers goes down or something. So not necessarily servers, but if the whole vault goes down, then it seals, right? And that's just to protect your secrets. So you will need those keys in order to unseal Vault properly and then get access to your secrets again. So what Johnny's referring to is that when you first start Vault servers specifically, they will be sealed. So you have to initialize the Vault sequence, and then it will provide you unsealed keys that you must store wherever you choose to store. Some people put it on a piece of paper and shove it in a safe. It just sort of depends.
I keep mine under the keyboard in case you're wondering, so no big deal.
On paper or just like written under the keyboard?
Yeah, I just actually have it like chiseled into the keyboard underneath it, so that way I don't lose it.
He stores it on a floppy disk that he tapes at the bottom of the keyboard.
Yeah. A
Also
floppy
true.
disk, that's pretty good actually. That's pretty good. Now that I think about it, that's a pretty good one.
I giggle because I was cleaning out my office. I moved offices, as most people on the stream know. I actually have a USB floppy drive that I should probably get rid of. I even have a couple dozen floppy disks that haven't been used in 25 years. So
awesome.
It's funny. I inherited them from my dad. He had, so some of us old people might remember back in the early 2000s, some of the first digital cameras actually used a floppy disk, a 3.5-inch floppy disk for their storage. So that's where I got those from. Anyways, today seems like a day for reminiscing, right? Episode 100. Johnny, we got a bunch of questions coming in.
Yeah, and most of them are actually for Rosemary. So the first one is, this is more of a statement. I won't do that one.
Would I deploy Vault in a Kubernetes cluster? Oh dear. So I think I do because it is easier, right? Vault servers, I would say the Vault Helm chart makes it really easy for you to deploy Vault servers into Kubernetes. There are some caveats to this. Like I said, you do want to secure any persistent volumes associated with that. On top of that, it's most of the time in the open source version, you do want to separate the Vault servers in a different cluster or somewhere else, right? You don't want to, at the very least, put them in their own namespace or project or something, like just do that. But it's ideal to put them in a separate cluster entirely and make sure you secure that cluster, right? It's not just publicly accessible because it is sensitive information. From an overall community standpoint, a lot of people who do deploy this in their organizations, they don't necessarily want to go through securing a Kubernetes cluster for Vault specifically, or for any other shared service that has these security requirements. So most of the time, they'll have the Vault servers in virtual machines or some other environment that they have better control over. And they'll still be able to use Vault in their Kubernetes cluster. They just reference Vault servers external to the cluster.
Yeah, that's an excellent answer. Yeah, what I've seen from my experience is like you have customers that are like, okay, I can have services that are in VMs, and those are my friend Lester's on here, right? He calls it the supporting cast, right? You can have your supporting cast in virtual machines and stuff like that, and the organization is fine with it. But then you also have the shift, right? That is like, I want everything in the cloud. I want everything in Kubernetes. Like if I'm running Kubernetes or OpenShift, I want everything running in cluster. And so I think it kind of depends on what the organization is really going after. Like if you're okay with having EC2s or VMs or whatever running your Vault service, and by all means go ahead and do it. Which I think is awesome that Vault is that like flexible to be able to run between both. I think it's a pretty incredible product. But yeah, just in my experience, it's been like you can have one or the other, and it's just really up to the organization on how they want to secure it.
Mm-hmm.
And then here's the other question.
Is there a
Go ahead,
managed
Andrew.
service for Vault?
Is there a what?
A managed service for Vault?
There is, yeah. It's called HashiCorp Cloud Platform Vault. Right now it's supported in AWS and AWS right now, but you can deploy Vault servers. They are on virtual machines. They're secured. HashiCorp secures them for you. And what you'll need to do is connect your VPC that needs access to it. So you'll peer or use Transit Gateway to connect up your VPC. And that allows you to retrieve secrets from Vault. There is a public URL, and that's more for debugging and development purposes, but you would by default provision on a privately accessible endpoint.
Got it. So
that's awesome.
If you completely want to be hands off, then that's an option too.
Yeah, and it will. The managed service handles upgrades. You can also cloud will also includes DR and HA if you choose it, right? So it sort of depends on the cluster setup you want. If you want a development cluster in one region, you can do that. But if you want DR, HA, all of that, and the performance replication, then you can also use the managed service for that.
Very cool.
That is awesome. All right, so
yeah, go ahead, Johnny.
Sorry, I was going to say the next question is do you know if the operator that's available in the OLM is that? I'm assuming that's the community operator, or is that
so. Yeah.
Okay. And then the next question. Keep them coming, Bjorn. These are awesome. Any experience using the Transit Secrets engine inside Kate's deployments? Any pitfalls or things to keep in mind?
Oh, yeah, this is a cool one. Transit Secrets engine is the one that secretly some people know about and some people don't, and it's really cool. Transit Secrets engine is it's for you to encrypt data in transit. So the primary use case that I see for Transit Secrets engine, specifically in Kubernetes deployments, tends to be I'm going to encrypt this data before I store it in a database, right? Some folks have PII that their applications are processing. And so what they'll do is the application needs to refer to the keys in Transit Secrets engine, use that to encrypt the data before it's stored in the database. So one of the pitfalls that you have to keep in mind and you have to be careful about is that Transit Secrets engine is going to be highly coupled to your application code, right? So there's a very difficult, it's not exactly easy to decouple the application from the actual encryption workflow. You need to encrypt and decrypt in your application. That's probably the more secure way to do it. You can't include a sidecar to do it. I mean, you could if you really wanted to. You'd have to write a sidecar to do it. But the most secure way that people do tend to use it is that they will have a live application library that they load with their application, and the application does encryption, decryption of that data before it gets stored into the database. Now, for Kubernetes deployments, as I mentioned before, if you don't want to refactor your application to do this encryption, decryption workflow, you will have to create a proxy or something that will handle it for you, depending on how your application takes in that data. So there's a couple ways to do it, but I think the biggest pitfall or the things that you have to keep in mind is that if you do implement it within your applications or within your Kubernetes deployments, it must be with the application code.
And just to point out that what you're talking about is encrypting the data at the endpoint and then sending it over to Vault, and then Vault storing that encrypted data.
No,
Or
so
does
it's
Vault decrypt the data on the other end?
yeah, Vault will help you decrypt it. So Vault will handle the encryption decryption, which is why the general workflow is application calls Vault, asks for the encryption key, and asks for Vault to encrypt the data. So the data is is sent over to Vault, Vault encrypts it and sends it back basically. But Vault itself does not store the data. It just simply handles the mechanism of encrypting it with its own keys. And then if you wanted to decrypt it, then you send that everything back and forth. So
and just to be clear,
yeah.
if you don't use that, that doesn't mean that the data is being sent in clear text as it's going
No.
across,
No.
because it's still an HTTPS connection,
Yes.
right? It's still being encrypted by your TLS certificates as it traverses the whatever network in between. It's just, if for whatever reason you feel it necessary to provide an additional layer of encryption, it's further protecting that data as it traverses the network.
Yeah. And as someone pointed out in chat, databases that don't have an encryption feature, right? This might be a problem if you have PII and you want to make sure that you're storing everything properly. There's actually a nice, I guess, consequence to this, that if you have GDPR requirements, right? And for some reason or another, something is compromised with your data, what you could do is you could actually just revoke the keys, the decryption keys in Vault, and then it makes that data, inaccessible, right? So it's one way to sort of deal with that. Once you rotate the keys on Transit Secrets engine, it sort of nullifies any of the encrypted data in that database.
There's a couple questions before we jump over to Afri's question. With the Vault servers, is there replication between them, or is that an enterprise-only feature?
So the Vault servers, they themselves do have replication, but for Vault clusters, right? So you can have one set of Vault servers, and it's one Vault cluster in, we can say US East 1. We'll say US East 1, even though it's down right now, or not down. It has some policy issues right now. But let's say you have a Vault cluster, a set of Vault servers in US East 1, and you have one in EU West 1, for example. Those two, right? Would be independently deployed, independently managed, but maybe you do have some shared secrets between them, right? Could be API tokens, service information, AWS accounts, who knows what it might be that you need those secrets replicated. So in that situation, Vault cluster replication is an enterprise feature.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that the solution recommended by Vault? Is if you have multi-clusters that you want to share secrets between, you essentially have to have Vault Enterprise to do that replication if you want to share the secret. Create one, share many type of thing.
Yeah. If you do want, have that many, but a lot of folks have done just like one Vault server or a couple. They don't need to share those secrets, basically.
Right.
They don't need to share secrets globally. And you probably very rarely would you have secrets that you would share globally, right? The replication, I think replication is more important, at least when I've talked to the community, in edge cases, right? Where there might be something that goes down. One Vault cluster that goes down in a region, they need to have some kind of caching mechanism to keep those secrets. And then eventually when it comes back up, they want to replicate it back to another region, for example. So that's a little bit more important. That's what they say, that's what's called performance replication. But I think in terms of the open source use case, most folks don't tend to share secrets between regions, partly from a security standpoint, partly because of just generally how identity and access management is constructed in cloud providers. Most of the time, they're constrained to certain regions. They don't tend to be global.
Gotcha. Thank you. Yeah, I think from when I'm looking at it, or I hear that, like, we generally deal with multi-clusters, so and they could be whatever, Azure, GCP, and stuff like that. And so to import them into something like ACM, we'd share a cluster, or maybe share a secret or something like that, or maybe we want to distribute a secret to some multiple clusters. So, yeah, but that's a very specific, like you said, edge use case, right? Like it's very targeted. So it definitely wouldn't be out in the wild.
So you mentioned that most folks in the community just have a single Vault instance and they kind of have everybody connect into that. How do you protect the data that's in there? Like backups, essentially. Is it just protecting the PVCs or?
Yeah, if you're deploying on Kubernetes, part of it is protecting the PVs and any backends that are associated with that. Vault will encrypt on this will encrypt using a seal mechanism, but also you probably want to make sure that they're also encrypted. The volumes themselves are also encrypted as well. There are a couple other pieces to this. Most folks want to isolate the vault on a specific network, right? So they don't even deploy it into a cluster with the expectation that that cluster is publicly accessible. They segment that into a certain subset of nodes as well, with very restricted access. So there's a couple ways to do that. If you're doing a shared one, a lot of the time, so there's a sort of a third mechanism. There's an operator mechanism that you can use to snapshot Vault as well. So you use that, make sure you back that up, back that metadata up somewhere securely. But if you have Vault going down, then you can always restore using that snapshot mechanism. The other things that people have done is that they've done their own version of replication, where they're going to have a standby cluster, which is completely independent of the current active one. And whenever, if let's say the active one has a problem, they'll use that snapshot mechanism to restore back to the standby and then swap it out. So that's kind of a way that they make sure they have some kind of availability around the Vault clusters without necessarily having multiple clusters joined.
It sounds like a whole lot of extra steps to just using Enterprise and having Enterprise replicate.
It is. Yeah, it is a lot of extra steps, but it's sort of the easier way to do. If you need replication, the easier way to get it now is through the managed service. It will offer it, so you don't have to worry about it as much.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Managed services. I'm so used to. We effectively have a managed service, right, Johnny? We call it the Red Hat Demo Platform. Like, I don't have to think about anything. I go in and I click a button and I have a cluster somewhere between instantly and roughly 45 minutes. I don't have to worry about credentials. I don't have to worry about any of these things. So I'm on board with managed services whenever possible.
Oh yeah.
You're tracking questions, right? Which one is next?
Yep. So and I apologize if I butchered your name, but Afri was asking about studying for the RCSA. Once you continue with OpenShift, what topics, concepts should you focus on to be successful as they move on to their architect journey? So it's a little off topic, but
yeah. Oops, I hit the wrong button there. Let me take 2 seconds to dig up a link. Although I don't think it's a public, so it will be terribly useful. Essentially, there is a list or a set of if you want to get really advanced and learn all the things about OpenShift and all that other stuff. There's a whole series of training that you can go through Red Hat Learning or Red Hat University, GLS, whatever. What do we call them now?
Yes.
Yeah, I can never remember. Here we go. This is what I was looking for. Right window, right tab. All right, so I'm going to post a link here. So this is to the redhat.com learning services folks, and it is for the EX280, which is the OpenShift course, and specifically the skills path. So that diagram gives you an idea of kind of the progression of courses that you can take to learn more about OpenShift and Kubernetes. Note that the first one in there, DO080, is a free course. So anybody can go in and take that at any point in time. It's a great link, and I think it's relatively short. It's like 45 minutes or an hour or something like that. I lost the question. So as far as topics to be successful with and the Red Hat architect journey, Red Hat historically, Rosemary, with your developer advocate title, close your ears, right? So Red Hat historically has been like, we tend to focus a lot on administrators and, sort of non-developer types. I say that knowing and acknowledging full well that we have a whole developer business unit and, the middleware folks and all this other stuff. But, like when you look at a lot of the OpenShift stuff, a lot of it is focused on administrators. So if you're wanting to focus on, architects like at the administrator level, there's just a tremendous amount of information that's out there across all of those different courses. I think that's basically the learning path that I link to. If you're looking at more like the Kubernetes application architect side of things, there's a separate learning path that I don't have off the top of my head. but yeah, it's one of those things where we're asking OpenShift admin. We don't know many developer things, so yeah, it just depends on your path there. I don't know. I'll quit rambling, Johnny, if you have anything.
Yeah, I think just go check out the documentation and like kind of see where you are. And like the RHCSA is definitely on the admin side of RHEL. Then start at 180. 188 is like the Podman advanced stuff where you're doing a little bit more with Podman. And then 280 is definitely OpenShift admin. 380 is like I think automation of OpenShift, which is like a little bit more intense. You're doing like more operator level things. And then obviously the progression up from that. So yeah, I think you covered it all. I think that's probably, if you're trying to go RHCA, that's probably a good path to stay on 280, 380, 480, because then you're very specific, as well as 180 and 188, because those specialty certificates are all part of that RHCA path.
Yeah. I'll say if certification isn't your primary goal, or even if it is, but you don't want to do the courses, definitely prioritize. If you look at where's my screen? If we look at the documentation over here, 4.12, it can very quickly get overwhelming trying to look and like learn all of these things. I did a fun thing the other day here. If we go to access.redhat.com, I go to products and services, cloud computing, OpenShift, and I think if I click on this one, and I want to go to, where's the documentation link? Product documentation. So I'm going this way because it takes us to it's the same exact documentation, just available in a different format. And I thought it was interesting because if I go to this install docs, which is the equivalent of this section of the documents, and I say, I want to download you as a PDF. How long do you think this PDF is, Johnny?
50 pages. Oh my God.
It's almost 4,000 pages.
That's awesome.
So there's no way any one human can know everything there is to know about installing OpenShift on all of these different platforms. Right. And this is just the docs for like how to walk through the install, like, click here, do this. It's not the stuff that's like underneath and happening and how to troubleshoot and all that other stuff. So, you got to prioritize. You got to like, what are the things, and it just takes time, but, a lot of things are the same. What's happening underneath the covers. It just changes how it interfaces with the underlying platform and stuff like that. But yeah, OpenShift is, Johnny, you've heard me say this before. I've probably said it on the stream, right? OpenShift is a fractal. For every question you answer, it opens up an infinite number of new questions that the answers to those open up an infinite number of new questions. And it's not just OpenShift. Kubernetes is the exact same way, right? There's so much happening inside of there that it's easy to get overwhelmed.
Oh yeah.
I say that from experience because I did the exact same thing, right? I used to work for a storage vendor. I thought I knew a lot about Kubernetes and OpenShift because my world was storage and CSI. And then I came to Red Hat and started working with OpenShift, and suddenly it's like dizzying the amount of things that are going on. So yeah, that would be my my recommendation. But yeah, I thought that was funny the other day. I was looking at that documentation. Not all of it is that bad. But some of it, yeah, definitely is.
It's a quick read.
It's just a little bedtime reading if you're having trouble falling asleep. So you're logging. We'll just look at logging. Logging is not bad. 350 pages. So virtualization, what's virtualization like? 425. See, it's just the install because there's so many install, ways of installing. Anyways.
All right. So going back to the questions. Thank you, Andrew. That was awesome. And yeah, I think that hopefully covered it. There's a lot of like chatter going on about the different cert exams too. So yeah, thanks for all the feedback in the chat for that. Our Hope 9 had asked, and this is for Rosemary. Do they need separate vaults for multi-tenant environments? Do we need separate vaults?
Probably a good idea to do separate vaults. It depends on who's accessing, I guess, for separate vaults. Think of it as separating legal entities within a larger corporation sharing infrastructure. It's, again, I think part of this depends on what your requirements are, right? So if you have secrets that are localized for specific groups of folks, there are mechanisms within Vault to segment that, right? So you don't have to have different vaults. Now, if you have a multi-tenant environment that's spanning globally and you want some kind of isolation between your secrets, and you plan on, let's say, localizing certain access to certain secrets, then maybe use separate vaults. But there are mechanisms within Vault itself that allow you to choose and segment who has access to what. So if you already have a multi-tenant environment, you can use API paths in Vault to separate who has access. There's a policy system within Vault to do that. You can also use in the cloud and enterprise version, there's namespacing. So that is, I guess, the equivalent of Kubernetes namespacing, but for Vault, not the same thing again, same term. But you can use namespaces, and what that will do is also separate sort of different entities within a larger Vault. But there are different ways people compose of it, and sort of depends on the requirements.
Awesome. All right, and then we have a question from Bjorn, and I'll just let you read it, so that way I don't.
Okay, would it be possible to auth with Vault and get a temporary token as a user account in OCP? So finally, to limit the users who are persistent in OCP. So this is an interesting question. I don't think there is an OCP secrets engine. But what you could do is use Vault as an OIDC provider. So what you could do is that you could set up in OCP I don't know if this is possible. So all the OpenShift folks, if like there's a way you could do this. You can use Vault as an OIDC provider. So what you could do is you could set up OCP to call back to Vault and use Vault to authenticate, and that will sort of return back to OCP. But I don't know if this is quite exactly the workflow that this question is getting to.
It almost sounds like creating temporary accounts on demand, and the credentials are sourced from Vault.
Yeah.
So, I have a cluster and Johnny needs access, but Johnny only needs access for the next 15 minutes or one login.
Yeah.
And so he goes to Vault and says, give me a credential. And at that point, something happens. Clearly we would need to create a service account or a temporary user account or something like that, and then return back that certificate or something like that to enable access there. So probably possible.
Yeah, there is actually a Kubernetes secrets engine.
Yeah, you would definitely need to have, unless there's something out there already, you would definitely need to have some sort of shim to do that account management side of things.
So I think it could be possible if OCP is using service accounts, like Vault does have a service account secrets engine. So let me drop the link to that. So that's Vault Enterprise Replication. But Vault, there's a Kubernetes secrets engine. And Kubernetes secrets engine will generate service account tokens. So if there's a way that you can link up OCP, right? OCP and the service accounts and the identity, right? The thing is, can you track that service account identity? That's the bigger problem. And I think that's probably something there's a question around just generally service accounts overall, auditing a service account access. But for Vault, you can use the Vault Kubernetes secrets engine to generate those. So you can try leveraging that.
That would be interesting. I'd be curious to learn more about your use case there. I think that was our Hope 9 that asked.
Bjorn.
Bjorn. I'd be curious to know more about your use case there, Bjorn. And we can share that with the security PM team here at Red Hat or here with OpenShift and see if they have any suggestions. I think, do the ACS folks still have a live stream, Johnny?
They do.
Do they?
Yep. It's Mike Foster.
Yeah, I don't remember how often it happens. I should look and see. So for anybody who's curious, I'll just do this. I'll walk through it live. So you can go to red.ht/livestream. And it takes you down here to the, episode calendar. And from here, you can see all the different stuff that we've got going on. So Secure Cloud Class Livestream. There you go. Next Thursday, or next Tuesday, rather, is their next episode. You'll notice also that I deleted our stream for next week because we're not going to be here, and you see it shows up on this calendar as being gone. So It's a great way to see what all's going on. And then this tab has a little more details about all the various streams. Anyways, go ahead, Johnny.
Oh, I was going to say, I think that they're like the last Tuesday or first or second, I can't remember. That's one or two Tuesdays every month. I just can't remember.
Yeah. Those guys might be a good one to ask that particular question to. But if you'd like, sorry to round out my thought here and interrupt you again, Johnny. If you like, shoot me an email, Bjorn, andrew.sullivan@redhat.com, just like my name there on the screen is. And I will reach out to the hosts of the Secure Cloudcast as well as that the Security PM team, which they're all tightly tied together. So.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I'm trying to make sure I keep an eye on all the questions. All right, so back to you, Rosemary. This is a question about HashiCorp stuffs.
Cool. How user-friendly is the HashiCorp ecosystem when servicing OpenShift versus Kubernetes Docker? Vault and Console, which I guess is the mesh reference. Vault and Console have Helm charts that do have OpenShift values. So there are specialized configurations. For OpenShift, the images are also in the OpenShift container registry, I think, as well. So that is pretty, I would say a lot of people use the Helm chart for OpenShift for both Console and Vault. With Terraform, I will double check. There may or may not be a Terraform provider for OpenShift. I'm not sure.
Funny you should say that, because the OpenShift installer actually uses Terraform.
There you go. Yeah, so if you are installing OpenShift, you would use Terraform. And if you want to further configure OpenShift, I guess there may be an OpenShift provider out there, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, the installer does use Terraform. You can actually go into GitHub and you can see where it does all that, but it is inaccessible. So you can't go in and modify the Terraform that it uses to spin up clusters or anything like that. It's all baked into the installer. But it is interesting that it uses Terraform on the inside in order to interact with the hyperscalers, and as well as on-prem, vSphere and all that.
Oh my God, there is an OpenShift provider.
It might be community. I'm not sure if it's supported, but you'll usually find a provider for many different things. So if you do want to administer your OpenShift clusters with Terraform, there may be a provider out there for you.
Yeah, I believe Mesh is a console rather is a certified. Like it's one of the ones that you can go into the operator catalog and install through there, if I remember correctly. So my cluster is being slow.
We had a question from Amir Mahdi.
Okay, so Vault encryption. I'll send some resources on that, but basically there's the internal encryption mechanism in Vault, which is the seal unseal. So I'll drop a link to that. Vault seal unseal. So that's information on that. That's how it encrypts the data, and then encrypts the data before it gets stored. And then there's the production hardening approach as well. So I don't know if we have a specific guide for Kubernetes, but we do have one for general Vault, so you can always follow that along. There's also TLS. You do want to turn on HTTPS for Vault, so there's also that. But those are, I think, the main ways that we would say end-to-end encryption. I don't know if there's something more specific you're looking for, but there is.
So there was a question like a few minutes later where can we set some sort of encryption which changes the key every 1 minute? So I don't maybe this is the more specific ask that they were going after. Like
okay, so you cannot. So with keys, they are, once they're issued, right, you can only change them through an operator command. And so there's not a lease related to the actual encryption keys for Vault specifically. So if we're talking about the encryption keys for Vault, you will have to manually recreate those keys if you do want them. That you would have the operator command to do, and you could script that. Separately, though, can you use, let's say you have Transit Secrets Engine or you have some secrets engine that provide some kind of encryption key or some key of some kind, you can use the Vault leasing system. So Vault will lease the secret out for a certain amount of time, and then renew or revoke it, depending on when you're using it and if you want it renewed or revoked. So those keys, yes, you can set time to live of 1 minute and rotate them every minute if you so desire.
And Rosemary, while we're sitting here, and Johnny, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we've mostly caught up on questions. I see our Open9 asking about Summit. But I just remembered as I'm looking at our little list of windows over here that you do have a demo. So we don't have to just sit here and play Stump the Chump. So if you want to show, what you've got going on, just let me know when you want to share your screen.
Yeah, we are all caught up.
You're caught up? Okay. All right,
Yep.
cool. And Restream always does this. Is it blurry?
It's a little garbled, yeah.
Restream always does this with this window. Okay, hold on. We're going to try this way. Let's see. Is that better or worse?
That's readable.
Okay, that's readable. We're going to just increase it a little bit.
Yeah, much better.
Okay. All right. So I guess just to go through it, I have Vault deployed. We're not going to get into it, but I use the Vault Helm chart to do that. So you'll notice there's Vault deployed. When you first, this is what I was talking about before with sealing Vault. When you first deploy Vault, Vault is sealed. So there's nothing, so you will not see it running. And it's waiting for you to initialize and unseal. So initializing and unseal, once you deploy everything, your first point is to basically do a Vault operator init command. And this will initialize Vault. I'm specifying the number of keys I want to use to encrypt Vault. You can, by default, you get 3 keys you get 5 keys and your key threshold is 3. So you need 3 keys in order to unseal Vault. Here, I'm just setting 1 to 1 to make it easier. But once you get these keys, store them carefully. You can rekey potentially, but it is a very difficult process with Vault. So just be careful. You do need the original keys. Once you lose the keys, you will not be able to unseal. So keep those keys. Well protected and secured. There's not a great way to rekey or do disaster recovery on Vault if, let's say, you lost all the keys. So that after you do the initialization, you'll take one of the keys to unseal Vault, and this will basically decrypt the backend data with all the secrets and all the configurations so that Vault can pass it to your application or to whatever systems you want. So I'll just do a Vault init. I'll initialize. We're not going to print out keys today. I'm going to try to avoid printing out keys. You laugh.
I've had to have my pool secret replaced because I've done that. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes.
Yep, same here.
Yes, we're not going to do that. I mean, yes, I'm going to remove this anyway, but the keys are not great.
For any Red Hatters who are watching, if you the Rover system, if you put your GitHub username in Rover, our security people will monitor like your GitHub repositories and will send you emails if you do things like post keys or other secrets and stuff like that in there, which I find is actually quite helpful.
Well,
Indeed.
Is there a way to pause my screen share for a second? Yeah, pause my screen share for a second because it appears that we have a key issue. So let's see.
So to answer your question, our Hope 9, while Rosemary is working through that. So one of the labs that I'll be doing at Summit is OpenShift virtualization. So that's the one that I've been writing content for lately, but it is not the only one. There's a number of others that we'll be participating in doing, and none of them are coming to mind because I literally have spent 4 hours this morning. Like I was up at 6 a.m. Just because I woke up and, well, I say just because I woke up. My son woke me up because he missed the school bus. And it seemed like a good time to write content. So, but yeah, so OpenShift virtualization will be one of them. So if you're there and you want to learn about some of the stuff that's in DO 316, which is the OpenShift virtualization course, we'll have 90 minutes of that content. Any chance to get a dev spaces session? We've talked about that before, Johnny. Who did we reach out to someone, or did we just take a note to reach out to someone?
We took a note to reach out to someone. I know who to reach out to, and I will reach out to them.
Okay.
So I'll take another note, but this time I'll follow up on it.
You'll move the sticky higher in the list, right?
That's right. It'll be my next number one priority.
So yeah, Dev Spaces is it's changed recently, and it's interesting. That's something I've been here at Red Hat. We do quarterly goals as sort of our performance management thing. One of my goals is to learn more about developer inner and outer loop activities and functions inside of OpenShift. So I've been trying to learn more about all that stuff. Apparently having a cluster for the sake of having a cluster isn't enough. You actually want to have workloads and users and all of these things. Who knew?
It's terrible.
I know. Div spaces on premises, so it gets more challenge, air gapped. Yeah, we can certainly talk to. I'm guessing it's Serena or somebody that you're going to reach out to, Johnny. We can certainly ask. So I think that's one of the disconnected operators, right?
I do not know for sure. Yeah, I was going to look that up.
I'll dig around and see if I can find it too, because 2 searching is better than 1, right?
Right. Allegedly.
Okay. I have no idea why it's not initializing right now, but we're going to just move on.
Okay.
Oh, that's of it I can just show.
Let me know when you want me to turn on your screen.
Let's do it. Let's give it one more shot, and then we'll see. For some reason, it decided it's just not going to unseal. So who knows what's going to happen with this?
Here we go. Red Hat operators supported in disconnected mode.
I found the article. It looks like it has code ready workspaces, which I know is the old name.
So yeah, that KCS that I just posted there has the list of all the various operators and whether or not they are supported and disconnected. So Rosemary, if you want, I have a cluster as well.
Oh, nice.
That has the Vault open.
Cool.
I don't know if that'd be helpful.
Yeah, you can share. Yeah, if you can share it. Right now, it's just like it refuses to unseal. So.
All right, let me get myself ready here. I may have put my foot in my mouth. Put the cart before the horse.
Yeah, folks, I think the unseal part is the one. It's the one everybody gets a little bit like, oh no, about. But there is an auto unseal. Oh, it is now. Okay, now it's initialized. Okay, all right, we got it working.
Okay, awesome.
All right, so I'll share.
All right.
Okay.
Turn it back on then.
All right. Okay, so it unsealed. There is an auto unseal mechanism. Use at your own risk. The auto unseal requires a cloud provider or some other provider that holds the keys. So keep in mind that if you do the auto unseal, basically you can configure Vault on startup to use those keys from your provider and then unseal Vault automatically. That means you don't have to do the three key or X key unseal process, but it does from a security standpoint raise a few concerns. So if you are not comfortable with auto unseal, then you will have to do this manual unseal. And the way you can tell if it's sealed or not is, well, sealed false here. So if you do a Vault status, you can tell whether or not it is available. Once it's unsealed, the stateful set, well, the readiness check will go to ready, right? So generally the way it works is that if you see your Vault servers not ready, that's probably an indication that it is sealed. All right. So the next thing about Vault is that when you use Vault with Kubernetes, Vault has a couple authentication methods. So the authentication methods are a way for you to authenticate to Vault. The easiest way to think about this is that if you have a Kubernetes application, you probably want to use a service account to authenticate to Vault. you don't really want to use a Vault token to authenticate to Vault or any other mechanism. You want to use whatever's native to Kubernetes. So in this case, we use service accounts. And the way you set up the Kubernetes auth method, you can do it through any way you desire. You could do it through the Vault config operator. It's a community operator, but you can set up auth methods through the config operator. You can do it through Terraform. You could do it through just Vault CLI. I'm just using a Vault API CLI to do that here. But the idea is that you will enable the Kubernetes auth engine, and you'll need to pass a series of tokens as well as certificates related to a service account that is running Vault. And you'll configure that as part of the Vault Kubernetes Vault Kubernetes authentication method. So what this will do is that any service account you create going forward that you say, I want to link to a Vault policy, they'll be able to authenticate to Vault. So it's important to realize that, let's say you have, a static password, we'll say a static password. In this case, my MySQL password is a static password. I'm just going to store it in Vault. Vault's not going to rotate it. Vault will just store it for me. The important thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the Kubernetes auth method in Vault, okay, let's create a role. And that role is going to be attached to a service account. This service account is, let's say, ExpenseDB MySQL. The namespace is expenses, right? I'm not going to tie it to the default namespace. Maybe I'll have a couple different namespaces associated with it. Once you create this role, this creates the relationship between the Kubernetes service account that your application will use and Vault. So once that service account is attached to the application, they'll be able to authenticate into Vault to retrieve information.
So we have a quick question here from Bjorn about can you use essentially a storage class for the persistent storage? But storage classes are consumed by PVC, so I'm assuming you can use a PVC for the storage.
Yeah, so I'll show you. There is a PVC associated with Vault. I'll show you PV. Yeah. So you can define what kind of storage class you want. The one that's important is going to be this data Vault 01. So each part of the stateful set has its own path, but it will tell you which storage class you would like, and you can choose.
Yeah, I see you're using the host path provisioner there. It doesn't have to be the host path provisioner. It can be literally any, including there's several storage partners who have encrypted offerings as well. So you can have encrypted PVs storing your encrypted Vault that is storing your encrypted secrets.
Yep. And let me pull up the Vault Helm chart, and I'll drop a link to the specific value that you would define. Let me double check storage class.
Hey, and real quick, Rosemary, are you okay with me? I found a link to some tutorials that HashiCorp has on their website. I'm just going to post that really quick.
Yeah.
That link, if you're, for those that are watching later, whatever, if you're wanting to spin up HashiCorp Vault and you want like the step-by-step kind of interaction, then go check out these tutorials. They're really good. That's essentially how I cracked spun the tires on it when I first got started with it. So it's really nice.
Yep. So when you deploy it, it comes with specifically this Vault agent, Vault 0. There's a couple things to turn on, and you'll notice there's a lot of other pieces here that I've deployed. We can probably skip to that part since I at least gave some overview of how you would set up your application to authenticate to Vault and retrieve that information. That pretty much stays the same. You usually use a Kubernetes service account and you use a Vault role. You set up a Vault role with the Kubernetes auth method that links to that service account. So as long as that deployment uses the service account, you're pretty much allowing that application in that namespace to authenticate to Vault and then retrieve secrets. But the second part of this is that, of course, retrieving the secrets. So there's application authenticating to Vault, and then there's application retrieving the secrets from Vault. There are 4 ways to do that. So this is where the handy dandy diagrams come into play. So there's actually 4 ways to do it. There's 3 mechanisms and 4 ways. So we're going to go through all 4 very quickly. The Vault. So the first one is the Vault agent injector. That's this one here. Can I zoom in here? So Vault agent injector is a little bit, I would say it's the more common approach that we ask people to use, mostly because it's the most arguably one of the more secure ways to do it. What you're running is the Vault agent as a sidecar with the application. So the Vault agent runs as a sidecar and continuously retrieves new information about that secret from Vault. So it will handle the revocation renewal of any leases related to a secret. So let's say your database password is rotated in Vault. Well, Vault agent will handle and recognize that difference and push it out to a volume, and your application consumes the secret from that volume. The secret can be templated. So if you have, let's say, config files that you want to template things into, you can use, you can pass in that template, that template, and then add the username password to that template. Vault agent will retrieve it and then populate that template file for the application to use. However, I recognize that for some folks, this isn't that popular. Mostly because they already have existing applications that are using Kubernetes secrets, or applications don't want to be reading files from volumes for one reason or another. So this is, I would say, this works for the majority of applications that are already reading from a config file, right? So for the most part, you're adding in the sidecar, and the sidecar is added in automatically. Are the files somewhere? Oh, yes. The files are somewhere. I'll share the link to it later. I can share the link to it now, just so that you have it. Let me pull that up. Yeah, so it's important to recognize that Vault agent at least keeps everything in the pod. You don't have to write it to an external volume. You don't have to write it to a Kubernetes secret. So the secret itself is localized to that pod.
And I'll interject to do a quick time check, Rosemary.
Yep.
I know you said that you had a hard stop. So for anybody who's watching, for all the folks on the stream, feel free to send in questions. We'll do our best to answer those as they come up. Anything that we can't get to here on the stream, we'll follow up with Rosemary, and we'll address them the next time that we're streaming. Or you can reach out to if you email them to us, we'll get those email. Yeah. Man, words are hard. We will get those responses from Rosemary, and we'll follow up with you. And of course, she volunteered her contact information there through social media, so you can always ping her directly.
Exactly. Yeah. And just because of time, I'll just show this part first, just quickly. Oh no. So what happened in that whenever I deploy the Helm chart, I can specify the specific injector information that I want. There is an injector for you, so you do not have to write the sidecar yourself, fortunately. What this injector will do is that if there is a annotation right here, if there's an annotation, Vault HashiCorp agent inject true, as long as you specify the attributes you want, the role that's in there, the secret that you want injected, as well as the template, for the most part, it will handle the injection of the sidecar itself. Keep in mind, if you do have certain services, like a service mesh that has sort of specialized configuration, agent injection is a little bit difficult to do. You might want to go the Kubernetes secrets route, just because the Vault agent is going to be running a sidecar, and you'll have to refactor that third-party service to retrieve information from the volume, the file in the volume. So that's one thing to keep in mind.
And I also want to point out, because you had in your code that you were just showing a moment ago, you're effectively injecting an environment variable in here. So sometimes people, and I've gotten some very strange questions on these topics, as I'm sure you have, and Johnny has before, of like, hey, like, how can I protect like root? If there's a compromise on my node and the attacker has root, how can I prevent them from getting access to the passwords? Well, if they have root and the pod is running, clearly they have ability to access and look at and see everything that's going on inside of there. So it would still be accessible in that respect. I don't know if there's anything like from an injection perspective or the way that it can, bring that data in that can prevent that. But I think for the vast majority of times, if somebody has root, they basically have
Yeah.
access to the system. I mean, they can
Pretty
do a
much.
memory dump on the system and get that information,
Yeah.
in various ways. So yeah, something, mitigation, something defense in depth, all of those other security things that I'm not going to go into because time.
Yeah, because time. Yeah. So this is where some folks will say, oh, if I go into the pod and I find this information, yes, you're going to get this information anyway. But so if you went into the application and got the information, same, at the end of the day, you're still compromising that secret. So that's, I guess, the first way. The second way is using the Vault secrets. So the Vault provider for the secret store CSI driver. There's a Kubernetes project called the Secret Store CSI driver, and it effectively does the same thing. The primary difference, though, is that it has a controller that is running outside of Vault, and that controller will retrieve the information from the provider associated with the controller, will retrieve the information from Vault as part of a custom resource. So that's the secret provider class, and then push it into a volume. That is a little bit different. I'll show a little bit of what that looks like. That is CSI. So CSI is a little bit different because you have to have this custom resource defined for the secret provider class, but it's a very similar approach. I'm defining what the secret name is. I'm defining where I can find it in Vault. So that's the secret path here, the username and password. And what this will do is write it to a volume. So you will, once again, write it to a volume, and you can retrieve it from the volume. I won't go into that because that pattern is very similar to the agent. However, there's another part of the secret provider class that you can enable. If you cannot use a volume, right, and you can't have your application read from a file on that volume, what you can do is do Kubernetes sync to Kubernetes secret with the CSI store. So you can enable.
Oh, that's kind
if
of
you
cool.
enable, yeah, it's pretty interesting. So you can use the Vault CSI. There we go. CSI enabled. Here we go. So what you can do is you can do sync secret. And what sync secret will do is synchronize the secret from Vault to a Kubernetes secret. The caveat to this, however, is that you still need to define the volume mount here. The reason why is that the secret provider class and the secret store CSI driver requires this volume declaration in order to initialize and pick up the attributes. So you still need this volume, but what you can do instead is synchronize the specific secret from Vault that you want to a Kubernetes secret. So in this case, I'm writing it to, let's say, expense DB MySQL. And in that case, it's a little bit easier. You don't have to worry about, again, refactoring your applications to use the file from that volume. Instead, you just use the Kubernetes secret as you would normally do. So here I'm using secret key ref.
Okay, that was good. Okay, that's cool. So you're still referencing it the way that you would do it traditionally, but you still have to have the volume that has it for the CSI. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Now, there's a fourth way. This is in beta. There's a fourth way to do it, and it's the Vault Secrets operator. So there's not to be confused with, there's many operators out there. There's the Vault operator that you use to deploy Vault. There's the Vault config operator, which is a community one to configure Vault. This is the Vault Secrets operator. The Vault Secrets operator is for synchronizing directly to a Kubernetes secret. So the reason why we went through these 4 iterations was we said, okay, we'll offer you the most secure method to do it. And that's Vault Agent. Then Secret Store CSI driver became a really interesting project to get involved in. So then we started to be a part of that community. And then folks were still telling us, hey, we don't really want to use Vault Agent. We don't want to refactor our applications. We have a lot of these services that we run on our clusters that need a Kubernetes secret. And so here is the Vault Secrets operator. Vault Secrets operator is an operator. Vault Secrets operator. And what it does is it has a set of custom resources that you can use to define the location of specific secrets you want synchronized. So if I use the operator, for example, you'll need to set up a Vault connection object. So this Vault connection is to my Vault cluster. This is local to that Kubernetes cluster.
Yep.
I have a Vault authentication method in which right now we only support the Kubernetes authentication method. And that's using, of course, a service account. You can then define the dynamic secret. So the operator, all of them will handle pretty much all Vault secrets engines. You don't have to worry about compatibility. They'll retrieve information from any of the secrets engines. And the operator does handle rotation. The agent also handles rotation. CSI Secret Store doesn't quite handle rotation the same way. So I would say in terms of full functionality of the actual rotation of dynamic secrets, you get that in the operator and the agent. But the operator, if you define a dynamic secret, you can do a rollout restart target where you can restart a deployment that's using that secret. And
that is awesome.
Yeah. So agent will do it automatically. If agent, you can, what you'll have to do with agent is a little bit different. You'll have to issue a sig term through an exec annotation on the deployment in order to restart your application and restart the pods. Versus the operator, you can declare, okay, I want to roll out restart on this deployment specifically.
Oh, that is so awesome. So you have the dynamic secret here, but I could also, if I had like a key that I wanted to use, right? Like I was just in love with the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog's back password. Yeah. And I wanted to use that everywhere. I could actually define that, and then if I ended up changing it, would it still roll it out, or is that is the rollout only with the dynamic?
I believe it also happens with, it might happen with the Vault static secret. I do have to double check though. So let me pull it up. The reason why is that there's a difference between how Vault dynamic secrets work versus the Vault versus static secrets. So dynamic secrets are leased, Vault static secrets are not leased. So I'm going to double check on that and I'll follow up with you. But I believe there is a rollout. There might be a rollout target. I have to remember where the CRD is.
Oh, that's awesome. No, this is awesome. I'm excited about this. We did have one question before you jump.
Yep.
And it's from Bjorn. And wouldn't it be nice to use Transit Secrets Engine to rebuild a kind of Bitnami sealed secrets operator in a GitOps way? So that way it's possible to store your secret in plain text, but encrypt it in Git. Is this done somehow?
Yeah, so there is a way, there's a couple community projects to do that. I would say that we've thought about whether or not this is something that people are interested in, like if something that HashiCorp, we would maintain. We've thought about it. If you're particularly interested, let me know. And I'm curious to hear, to what extent you want to be using that use case. There are various community projects that do this. So like SOPs, for example, will do something similar where you can use the Vault Transit Secrets engine to encrypt that secret and then push it into Git.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know we're at the end of your time, Rosemary. So thank you so much for joining us. And you can feel free to drop out at any time. And Johnny and I will drive the truck into the wall. I mean, bring it home.
Yeah, that's right.
But thank you so much. All right. Well, so while Rosemary is leaving us, I will take down her name because I am not Rosemary. I cannot answer all of those hard questions. So Johnny, that was great. I learned a lot. Like I said, I've been around and sort of adjacent to Vault for a number of years, but I've never really dug in depth with it because I just haven't had a need. But I recognize and understand that a lot of folks do. And there's a lot of stuff happening with, there's the CSI secrets operator and stuff like that. I think that's really cool stuff. So anyway,
I think the big setback for the CSI operator, especially like kind of to Rosemary's point, like when you have to mount it in a specific volume, and then you have to mount that volume into your app, and then you have to tell your app to use that volume. And I think that adds some complexity, especially when you have an application where I just do a key reference, and that's how I get my secrets, or I do like an environment variable, and that's how I would get my secret in my app. So it's a learning curve, but I think as we evolve, right, and we have these tools where we can actually do this management a little bit easier, then we'll see that transition going from the key reference to like the volume reference.
Yeah. Yep. And let's see, we're coming up on Kubernetes' 8th birthday, I think. I think it was 2015 was when Kubernetes 1.0 was released. something like that. So
I'm looking. 2014, 9 September 2014, initial release.
All right then. So yeah, we're coming up on we're past the 8th birthday. So yeah, maturity is a great thing. It's
Yeah.
still I always wonder when people say, oh, Kubernetes is immature or something like that. Like, how long does it need to be before it's mature?
Oh man, right?
Was going back to the production ready topic.
My God, and you think about like just 2 years ago, like the capability that we had then, we're like, oh man, this is awesome, and then today we're like, that was nothing. This is amazing. Like it's so, yeah, it's great.
Yeah, well, I responded to somebody in chat this morning. They were talking about doing updates, and they wanted to update a cluster from 4.8 to 4.12, and it's do I just click the button and let it roll? I'm like, well, you might want to like at least read the release notes there, because there's a lot of stuff that has changed across those 4 releases. So yeah, it's definitely a definitely not traditional enterprise software. That's the phrase I'm going to use. Where you have I was a storage admin for a long time, right? We might do storage OS upgrades once every 2 years. And now you're talking about like OpenShift, Kubernetes, where you're doing upgrades every 3 to 4 months. Let alone, well, that's a minor upgrade, right? 4.11, 4.12, 4.10, 4.11. Never mind Z streams, where you're doing them weekly or bi-weekly, assuming you're keeping up.
Yeah.
So yeah,
man, just think back in the day, right? Where back in my day, we had some of these systems that were running, and like people were like, okay, well, the guy that ran that is either dead or left, and we don't know what's going to happen if we update it. So it's just going to be there. And so we had stuff that was running on Windows 2000 in like 2013. So you're like, it's time to move on, guys. Like we got to do something. RHEL 4 is still out there. It's like, come on.
Yeah. Well, I something OpenShift 3.11. It's still out there, still hanging on. We're past the end of life, right? Or is it like dead, like really dead, like finally, really, actually, fully dead? I think this year.
Yeah, but is anything ever actually really finally, fully, completely?
No. I'm always. I think it's interesting to see how long OpenShift 3.11 has held on, and just how functional, how useful it has been for folks. It's 3.11 was released in 2019, I think.
Nice.
Yeah, it was 2018 or 2019. Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah. So 2 years ago, right before I came over to engineering, I actually was on a customer engagement where I deployed OpenShift 3.11. So I came over in November.
See, you're part of the problem, Johnny.
I am. I'm an enabler. Yeah, it's like I think April or May of that year, I deployed 3.11 for a customer.
Yeah.
I am part of the problem.
I did many OpenShift 3.11 deployments myself. Anyways, enough rambling. I don't know if you can hear, but my stomach is like growling at me. It's Afri. Yeah, some companies, there's definitely a lot of RHEL 6 out there still. And if you're at Summit, you'll be hearing a lot about updating off of RHEL 7 and CentOS 7 and all that other stuff as well. Probably already seen some emails about that. If I know I've gotten a bunch of emails about it. So yeah, it's I get it. I worked for some of those organizations. Same organizations you did, Johnny, where we were running software that was we'll say slightly out of date.
A wee bit.
All right. Well, thank you to our audience. Thank you to Rosemary. I know she's already gone, although I did see her pop up and chat there briefly. So really appreciate her coming on. Fantastic presentation. Fantastic set of questions. Thank you so much, audience, for all of your questions. It really makes a big difference. And I know I made a joke there about playing Stump the Chump. That's why we're here. Literally, ask us the hardest questions that you have, and we'll do our best to answer them. And if we don't know the answers, which, let's be honest, happens relatively frequently, we're more than happy to reach back into product management, engineering, right, whoever it takes for us to find those answers and get those answered. As always, if something comes to mind after the stream, or if you are not watching us live, you can reach out to us via email or social media. I am at practicalandrew or andrew.sullivan@redhat.com. Or you can reach Johnny at jrocktx1 or Johnny at redhat.com. And I always like to throw out that we are also on the Kubernetes Slack channel. So that's a great way to reach out to us in real time. Thank you, Johnny, for that link.
I was ready.
Yeah. So the Kubernetes Slack is a great way to reach out in real time, and that link will take you directly to the OpenShift users channel in the Kubernetes Slack as well. And we have the same usernames over there too. So with that being said, Johnny, let's raise a virtual champagne glass. 100 episodes down. It's 100 more to go. The next 3 years, and we'll see what happens. Hard to believe,
awesome, man.
Hard to believe.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's a good milestone. We ended, we capped our 100 off with an excellent topic. So this was good.
Yeah, and just in time for lucky release number 13.
That's right.
Depending on how superstitious you are.
My son would agree with you. He was born on Friday the 13th, so he would completely agree with you.
There you go. Oh, my phone is ringing. Potential spam. No, thank you.
Not today.
All right, y'all. Have a great week. Actually, have a great 2 weeks, 3 weeks,
2 weeks.
Before we will see you all again. Anybody going to KubeCon? Safe travels. Enjoy your time there. Take in all the sites. KubeCon is always one of those where it seems like more than half of the attendees are first-time attendees. KubeCons are a blast, so enjoy your time there. Be sure to say hi to all the Red Hat folks, give them a hard time, ask them hard questions. And then the following week, be sure to tune in here on YouTube and Twitch, where we will be showing the what's new in OpenShift 4.13. I'll be here in chat, answering questions, doing all that other stuff. Johnny, I think you'll be here as well. Or no, you're doing something that day, aren't you? I don't remember.
Oh yeah, I'll be giving training.
Okay, so Johnny won't be here, but I'll be here. And I promise you that any questions, any comments, any feedback you have, the PM team absolutely pays attention to what happens on the stream. So definitely, if you have any thoughts or anything like that, don't be afraid to share them. That's why we're here, and we do share all of that back with the product teams. All right, I'm done. I'm out. Thank you, Johnny.
Yes,
any
sir.
last words?
Real quick, I tested a deployment in East 1. It is working. East 2 is still not working. So East 1 is working.
Nice. Thank you.
That's it for me. Thank you.
All right, y'all. Bye now.